guess I'm just going to start off reading from everything, though. So I would start with a joke, but honestly, I'm a physicist, so like I only know really, really corny and crappy jokes. So like the one that I always told my students was, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" And then I always have to ask, "Well, is it a spherical chicken, a square chicken?" And they're just they just kind of throw up their hands and say, "You're not funny. Just stop." Okay? So I'm just going to read from everything I have, though. So what is cost? Is it just dollars and cents out of your wallet, or is it change that's unwanted? I have a very aggressive course of malignant multiple sclerosis. Amy and I were diagnosed at 26, almost 15 years ago now. I say we because this is a disease that doesn't just impact me. It impacts her, it impacts my 11-year-old daughter, and it impacts my 9-year-old son. And yeah, me a little bit, I guess. So just a little bit. So our favorite things to do are just hang out with each other. Neither of us are very extroverted. We just love having a quiet, completely non sequitur talk about things from science to sci-fi to politics. No, we don't keep up with the Kardashians or anything else like that, though, so that's kind of okay. My disease is a story of us. When I was diagnosed, both Amy and I were working on baccalaureate, I can't talk today, degrees at a major university. She had gotten her master's in structural and computational biology with a 4.0. Yeah, she's amazingly smart. That's all I have to say about that. Me, on the other hand, I always like to say I was never the smartest person in the room. I was just the one to stay up the latest to get it right. This is kind of how I am. The number of nights that I stayed up until 3 or 4 a.m. to finish my research in physics on my master's was kind of, there was a lot of them. There's a lot of nights, let's just say it that way. Initial symptoms were facial paralysis, complete deafness on one side, and the need to sleep for 10 hours or more every night. Yeah, the first two were scary, but I just figured it was a pinched nerve. As a former pro athlete in ice hockey, I always used to say just rub some dirt on it. I figured the pinched nerve would go away over time if I just stretched it and did some regular ibuprofen. And the sleeping for 10 hours, my grad advisor said it was because I was a newlywed. No, I wish. Luckily, Amy wouldn't let me just rub some dirt on it. She pushed me to see neurologists and get the necessary studies. Diagnosis was fun. At the time, I was a junior physicist at a major medical center down in the Southwest, and we were expecting our first little girl. We had just purchased our first home together, so I'm already overwhelmed with life, and then this disease shows up adding a whole new wrinkle. As an imaging physicist, I was always recruiting Amy to be my normal control for MRI sequences. The first time she's on the outside of the glass, she immediately sees the color drop out of the tech's face. It was MS. While the technologist couldn't say it, it was pretty clear the diagnosis was pretty quick. What did this mean? I knew that we didn't have a cure and we just had to, how this was going to impact my life, my career, etc. It was a lot all at once. So we decided to move back, actually, though, to Southwestern Virginia. We loved moving back to Southwest Virginia, but the fun part, though, was I had vestibular balance issues. Vestibular balance is all sorts of fun, which is you have no balance if you can't see. So here's the awkward part. Got a couple of you basically have a young kid at that point. Can't really walk around in the dark, though, basically, at this point, though. So I had to turn on all the lights in the house to go from one side of the house to the other, though. So I was still walking. I wasn't using Rolling Thunder here yet at the point to figure out things. So life went on. Doctors didn't know what to do with me. At this point, I've tried 9 different therapies, and it's been 15 years now. So the whole thing was not really regaining any function with having all these different therapies and having to take a back seat to raising my kids and living my life. So over the past 5 years, disease has gotten significantly worse pretty quickly. With the therapies, insurance is required to cover the therapies regardless of the price changes. However, they aren't required to cover symptomatic therapies. What the heck is a symptomatic therapy? So for example, one of the ones I went on the nickname for it was the walking pill. Fundamentally, it improves the signal your brain sends down to your legs. I kept getting worse, but I was still walking on it. Then insurance decided, we don't want to pay anymore. So I was notified on December 15th, they wouldn't be covering it in the next year. So what the heck does that mean? So I had my first fall in mid-February after running out 30 days before. Then 2 weeks later, and this kept happening for the next 3 months. At the 3-month mark, I decided to start to buy a power scooter. Can you imagine, having to buy a power scooter in your mid-30s and now 2 kids and a pretty demanding, high-paying job as well, too. So it eventually became clear that I had to take a break and leave the hospital. Honestly, I expect to retire there, so having to leave that quickly was a little bit upsetting. Let's just say it that way, though. I think that's the best way. Um, so then I had to start basically using a walker for the stairs as well, too. So being 6'3" and using a walker is as much fun as you think. Let's just say it that way. These things are built for someone who is a foot short or 150 pounds less. Okay. In the house, falls were happening left and right, transferring from my car to the wheelchair, trying to get into the tub, taking 2 steps to the bed, take your pick. The fire department and I, we became fast friends because they were coming out to visit every 2 weeks. You know, when you start having conversations about, hey, how are your kids doing? So, is that a new tattoo? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Good for you. Yeah. So what I eventually accepted through Amy's help, let's use the word help. This is not something that I could fight and win. To paraphrase some old wisdom, accept the things that I have control over, but don't be afraid to ask for help. That's the reality of it. After several months of woe and self-loathing, I decided that this wouldn't be the end of my story. I couldn't do what I was trying to do anymore because, quote, this is the phrase I like to use all the time, giant magnets and giant metal wheelchairs, they don't play nice together. Okay, so let's just say it that way. So I wasn't going to let the disease define me. I decided to fight. I went and got help to address the self-loathing and to take control of the house. We've been in a holding pattern for a few years, but decided it was time to do something. I accepted we didn't have a cure for this condition, and we moved forward on adding a handicap addition to the house and seeing some counseling. I needed a script. I needed to basically move forward on my disability and also learn not how to see the world from a lowered height. Again, this is pretty high up though, but I'm still only like 5'5" here, you know, so going down 8 to 10 inches, it's not fun. I decided though I needed to accept it and basically say this was not the end of my story. And I said, no, absolutely not. You gotta keep going. So I decided to use my voice. There have been so many people that I've known with this condition who can't argue for themselves. I've been down here in the South for 20 years, but I'm still originally from New Jersey. I learned how to be a Southern gentleman, but still occasionally use my Joyzy voice to get things actually accomplished. I figure that I have a unique perspective. I've always been a pragmatist. I didn't want pity or empathy. There was so much suffering that had to change. After spending a decade working in the cancer center, I was questioning, why are we taking a try and see approach with these MS therapies? Again, 9 therapies at this point. Can't do 9 fingers with one, but anyway. Cancer has a huge repository of data collected over the years. Through development of the data sets, a lot of treatments have been developed. For example, in the past 40 years, the 5-year survival of prostate cancer has gone just from 69 to 100%. This doesn't just happen overnight miraculously. We've gotten infinitely better at finding as well as treating. As someone who's tried all these therapies over the years, what do we do to determine the optimal therapy choice? Also, I normally talk to basically 3 or 4 patients normally diagnosed every month, and they're just given a bunch of brochures and said, hey, what do you want? What sounds good to you? This is not the Olive Garden. You're not just here to pick out something on the menu. I mean, you're fighting for something to figure out how to keep as active as you possibly can. You shouldn't have to make your own choice. So I figured, though, we would actually use my wife's gifts and my gifts, though. So we're actually working on developing some tools, actually, though, software-wise, to actually help figure out what disease, basically, what is actually going to be the best thing for you, though. So we're fighting. I'm not fighting all the time yelling at Congress. I'm fighting basically using the stuff that I know that I can actually do really well with, though, through software and things like that. Also, I've actually figured out, though, to use other skills that I have, though. So it's always fun, too. I'm also teaching after-school robotics now to kids. Just because I know I'm an electronics geek and I like, basically I can still do that. So I'm using the voice that I have, though, to basically help the next generation. Would I prefer to do the research myself? Of course. But I want the kids to learn the schools, to basically learn the tools until we basically actually can find something. And learn the message, though, you need to keep moving forward no matter what. The major phrase that we like to use a lot with MS, and this is the one I always like to use, champion as well, too, is I have MS, but it doesn't have me, okay? That's the way to look at this. We have to be our own advocate, and we have to fight as best we can for ourselves. We can't just passively sit back and wait for someone to find a cure. We need to live our best lives now and help in whatever capacity we can to find different cures, okay?